Hello and welcome to the Ferrar Business News. Today we're joined by Gavin Ferrar, CEO of Central Asia Metals. Gavin, welcome.
Hi Megan, it's great to be back.
Thanks. So you've recently released your full year results. Can you just give us an overview of the operational and financial performance?
Sure, thanks very much. I think operationally we had a good year in spite of some challenges. I think at Kounrad we got right in the middle of the guidance range of 13,439 tonnes copper produced there. At Sasa, lead and zinc mine, we produced 18,500 tonnes of zinc and just over 26,500 tonnes of lead, which is fractionally short of guidance, but in the context of all of the projects that we were carrying out during the year, I think it's a fair result by the guys out there. Financially, we did pretty well in comparison to 2023. We have revenue of $214.4 million in 2024, which led to $101.8 million of EBITDA at a margin of 47%. Through the year, we generated $65.7 million of free cash flow. And as most of our shareholders know, that's the number we use to calculate the dividend. And that has allowed us to announce a 9p dividend, which brings the final 2024 dividend to 18p. And that constitutes 63% of our free cash flow. So we're outside the policy range again. The policy, remember, is 30 to 50% of free cash flow every year. But in the absence of a material transaction, we just think it's the right thing to do to continue with this program of capital returns to our shareholders. All of those numbers I read out before, as I said, compared to 2023, they're all slightly up. So a good year all round.
Brilliant. Thanks for that. You mentioned the projects at Sasa and you've been transitioning to paste fill mining. How has that impacted production and what will be the benefits for the longer term?
Well, I think, as I said earlier, it did have an impact on production, and we are implementing 2 new mining methods. So there's a lot of investment in training, and it takes the guys time to operate. There's only one piece of new equipment, but they've got to learn to drill new patterns, new hole patterns. They've got to learn to work on the paste fill itself. We've actually got the paste fill to go in. So it's got quite complicated for them over the last year. So as I said, in the context of all of that, I think the production performance was actually pretty strong. But what that's going to do for us is now extend that life mine out to 2039. I think we've reported that number before, and because we're maximizing the extraction of the ore body now using those 2 new methods, cut and fill and long hole stoping. It also has the benefit of increased safety over the sublevel cave, so we're pleased about that. And even though we're much more applicable to the narrower parts of the ore body, so reducing dilution, and hopefully, the long-term benefits of this, maybe slight decrease in tonnage will be offset by the more metal that we get out of the ground.
Thanks for that. And as well as the operations, you've also had a busy year on the business development front. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Look, we're always busy doing that, and it's very difficult to talk about because a lot of it's confidential, a lot of it doesn't go anywhere. But what we do is we keep a few stats up our back in our back pocket, and we looked at 37 potential targets through the year. We signed 13 NDAs and we undertook, I think, 5 or 6 site visits. So it was good, but we did have a couple of wins. So we established the Camel X. They had their first full year, and they've really been busy doing target generation and ground truthing of those targets and then applying for licenses. So we did secure 2 licenses during the year, and I'm pleased to report we've had another 2 announced. We'll have another 2 since the beginning of this year as well, which is great. And the team in Kazakhstan is really experienced. We've got Louise Rattle, our CFO, sits on the board of that business, as well as our treasurer. So it's pretty well controlled, and we own 80% of that. And we probably spent around $1.3 million on that during 2024. That's likely to go up now because we've got those 4 licenses and we've got some proper work to do in terms of geophysics and geological mapping and surface programs there. So really excited, looking forward to that. The other limb was a slightly more advanced exploration project. We made an investment of $3.8 million into Aberdeen Minerals for about a 28% shareholding in that business. They are exploring for copper and nickel mineralization in an ultramafic system up near Arthrath in Scotland. And initial results that we've had from that drilling are basically validating the exploration model there. So again, positive outcome, and we'll keep a close eye on that. Key thing here is that we've got a really flexible balance sheet. We've got 0 debt on our balance sheet, and that allows us to compete for assets, and also to minimize dilution to our shareholders, because we can use our own cash, which we're generating, plus also leverage off that balance sheet in order to effect transactions. So good progress. Unfortunately, no success on the material transactions, but our shareholders need to know that we're trying as hard as we can on that front.
Great, thanks for that update. And moving on to ESG, it's always been something that's been a big focus of yours.
Yeah.
What highlights you want to make for the period?
I think the key highlight for 2024 was really achieving conformance with the Global Industry Standard for Tailing Management, or GISTM. It's easier to that trips off the tongue slightly easier. That's taken us 3 years, and that's been voluntary. Right? So we're not obliged to do that, but we think we're trying to move towards best practice in all things, and the tailings management being very important to us, and the industry in general. I think that was a good place to start. And again, extremely proud of the team for achieving that conformance. What that means is we've had a third-party consultant actually audit us, and found that 92% of what we'd implemented was already in conformance, and the remaining 8% was what they call in plan. So that gives us conformance on that GISTM. The other key thing is that we've had the first full year of the solar plant, which we announced back end of 2023 at Kounrad. Now that generated around 14% of our power requirements. And initially, if you recall, we built that, Megan, to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. It's a tough environment to do it in Kazakhstan right now, but we sort of had to take the initiative as a business to do that. But what we have seen in its first full year has actually had a really good cost benefit. So producing that 14% of power has actually it's produced at about 2/3 of the grid power cost as well. So we are looking at a much more sort of aggressive payback period on that particular project now as well. We also have the foundations established at both sites. Our commitment there is to fund those foundations at 0.5% of our revenue. So it's around about just over $1 million a year at the current revenue run rates. And those are applied to all sorts of good causes. So we're looking at youth programs, sport programs, looking for people that have disabilities, or sort of socially disadvantaged people, that kind of thing. So looking to make a much longer term sustainable difference in the areas within which we operate. So those are going really well too. And last but not least, health and safety. I mean, that is key to us all, and happy to report that at Kounrad, we had 0 LTIs. These are lost time injuries. And at Sasa, we had 2. Unfortunately, we are striving for 0 harm. Getting 2, they were kind of minor, but we still, they still count, and they still have learning points coming from them, and changes in procedures and training and that sort of thing. So we try and take, in the sort of cliched football parlance, some of the positives out of these things. But, I think the striving for 0 harm is key for us.
Great, thank you for that. And lastly, what can we expect for the rest of the year?
Well, we put our guidance out at the beginning of January. So we're guiding 13,000 to 14,000 tons of copper, 19,000 to 21,000 tons of zinc, and 27,000 to 29,000 tons of lead. So it's the same as last year. So not much changing there. And CapEx, $18 to $21 million across the group. Now, some of that is carried over from these capital projects from the previous year. But it's really what we're seeing from now on is a much reduced CapEx profile from CAML, where we're returning to the sustaining CapEx levels at Kounrad as well as Sasa over the next few years. So that means we can be generating more cash and give us more firepower to do some interesting things. We've also got the last element actually of our transition projects is what we call the dry stack tailings. That is to in place filter cake, as we call it, on surface. We've been talking about paste backfill underground over the last year, and that's done really well. But that plant is actually commissioning this week. So we're expecting that to be fully operational by the end of the first quarter, which is great news. We've got drilling going on in Scotland with Aberdeen Minerals as well. So looking forward to some results out of that as the year goes, as we go through the year. And then finally, the business development pipeline. We're working on a lot of opportunities there, and we'll sort of actively be managing that pipeline and hopefully building that pipeline. And fingers crossed, we'll convert on one of them over the next 9 months or so. So it's going to be a fun year.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that overview. It's been really helpful.
Thank you, Megan.